All rise. The Topeka Shawnee County Youth Corp Topeka Youth Project is now in session. The Honorable Judge Chance Lammer is now presiding.
Good evening and thank you for being here tonight. The Topeka and Shawnee County Youth Court is an alternate to the regular court system. Youth court defendants are offered positive alternatives to breaking the law. The Topeka and Shawnee County Youth Court strives to seek justice for the victims as well as for the community. There are three major themes in youth court: respect, responsibility, and accountability. The student defendants you will see tonight have volunteered to participate in the Topeka and Shawnee County Youth Court and have taken responsibility for their actions prior to being admitted into the program. They have also agreed to be held accountable for their actions. Therefore, the court requires that everyone in attendance have respect for the defendants, their families, and all of the participants in the program. All observers and jurors should remain silent and orderly at all times. If anyone fails to follow this rule, they will be asked to leave the courtroom. If it is necessary for anyone to enter or leave the courtroom during the trial, please do so quietly. Confidentiality is important to our student defendants, to their families, to our youth court officers, and to our jurors. Although the Topeka and Shawnee County Youth Court is an open process, we require that the details from tonight's cases are not repeated or discussed outside the courtroom. Thank you to all the adults and the students whose support makes the Topeka and Shawnee County Youth Court possible. At this time, the court calls the case of John Doe. Would the parties please state their appearances for the record?
Richard Becker, appearing for the prosecution, Your Honor.
John Doe, the defendant, appears in person with his attorney, Ye Wong. The parent and guardian of the defendant are also in attendance, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, in this case, the defendant has accepted responsibility for the offenses of driving without a driver's license. It is your duty to determine fair and appropriate sanctions for this defendant based on the evidence you will hear tonight. Bailiff, would you please swear in the jury?
You guys can stand and raise your right hand. And repeat after, or actually stand. Do you and each of you solemnly swear to listen to all of the evidence that is presented in this case, to fulfill your duty to determine a sentence that is appropriate based upon the evidence, to follow the law and to be fair to the defendants, the victims, and the community, so help you God? If so, answer I do.
Members of the jury, in this case, the defendant has accepted responsibility for the offense of driving without a driver's license. It is your duty to determine fair and appropriate sanctions for this defendant based on the evidence you will hear tonight. I will now ask you a few questions to determine whether you can fulfill this duty. If the answer to any of these questions is yes, please raise your hand. You are not automatically disqualified for answering yes to questions. However, if you cannot be fair and impartial to the defendant, you will be excused from this jury panel. Again, if any of these answers to these questions is yes, please raise your hand. Number one, are any of you close personal friends of the defendant or his or her family? Have any of you had past disagreements or arguments with the defendant? Are any of you close personal friends with the prosecuting or defense attorneys? Have any of you had past disagreements or arguments with any of the attorneys? Do any of you believe that you cannot be fair and impartial in this case? Is there anyone who believes he or she cannot follow the instructions of law which the court will give you at the completion of this case? Does the prosecution accept this jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Does the defense accept this jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, please stand. Are the parties ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Does the prosecution wish to give an opening statement?
Yes. Good evening, Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Richard Becker, and I represent the city of Topeka and Shawnee County in this case. The defendant, John Doe, received a ticket for unlawfully operating a vehicle and causing an accident on June 7, 2012. Showing a disregard for the safety and security of himself and others, as well as a disregard for the law. The defendant has admitted guilt and is here to take responsibility. During the course of the proceedings, the prosecution intends to demonstrate the appropriate sanctions needed for excessive speeding.
Does the defense have an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Members of the jury, we intend to show that John Doe is a good person. He has never been in any kind of trouble and realizes the consequences of his situation. He is a good student and is willing to take responsibility of his actions by voluntarily attending youth court. He has paid the youth court fee and realizes that he will have to complete the sanctions the jury imposes.
The prosecution may now present evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the jury, the defendant has admitted responsibility for the facts of this case. As such, I would like to read a copy of these facts. On June 7, 2012, John Doe was ticketed for causing a one-vehicle accident in the 6200 block of Northwest Valencia Road. He was also cited for driving without a Kansas driver's license. In light of the stipulated facts, the case rests.
Does the defense wish to present any evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls John Doe to the stand.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony which you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, please state your name for the record.
John Doe.
How old are you?
I'm 15.
Okay, what school do you attend?
Topeka High School.
And what activities are you involved in?
I do soccer, tennis, Model UN, AFS Club, Amnesty International. I do, and I think that's it.
Do you do any community service around town?
Sometimes I volunteer at the Children's Discovery Center.
Have you discussed your involvement in youth court with your parents?
I have.
Was it your voluntary decision to accept responsibility of your charge of drug and drug?
It was.
Are you willing to accept the sanctions imposed by the jury?
I am.
Could you briefly explain what happened?
Well, on the said night, I was driving home from a friend's house, and I got about halfway there, and I realized that I'd forgotten my license at my friend's house. And obviously driving without a license is not an acceptable thing. So I turned around, but as I was turning around, I skidded out of control because I was on a gravel road, and I hit a washed out spot, I think. And I just ran off the road into a tree, and there's nothing I could do.
Okay. And did you have a parent punishment?
I did.
Could you explain what it was?
I'm grounded for 3 months. I have to pay the, damages, and, well, yeah, both of those things.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions for this witness.
Does the prosecution wish to cross-examine the defendant?
Yes, Your Honor. Okay. So you are 15, correct?
That's correct.
And you're driving on a restricted license.
Yep.
And on a restricted license, you're only supposed to drive to school and to work, correct?
Sounds about right.
And why were you out at a friend's house and driving back?
Well, the reason is because I had gone there directly from school, which in hindsight probably wasn't a good decision, but...
So you weren't supposed to be driving anyway?
Well...
Are you aware of the Kansas driving laws?
Yes, I am.
So, and you're aware that you're breaking the laws?
Yeah.
No further questions?
The witness may now step down from the witness stand. Does the defense have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the defense rests.
Since the facts of this case have been agreed to and the defendant has admitted responsibility for the charges of driving without a driver's license. Closing arguments shall be limited to the sanctions to be imposed by the jury. Each side will be limited to 5 minutes each, with the understanding that the prosecution may present its closing arguments.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the jury, the defendant was ticketed for driving without a driver's license and caused an accident. He wasn't supposed to be driving anyway, and auto accidents are the #1 killer of our nation's youth, and the defendant could have harmed not only himself, but other people as well. Responsible drivers need to realize that their actions create risk, and in order for the defendant to learn more responsibility while driving, the prosecution recommends a sanction of 25 hours of community service, an apology letter to his parents, and 3 jury duties. Thank you.
Does the defense wish to make a closing statement?
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court, members of the jury. John Doe had no malevolent intention to hurt anybody in this accident, and in fact, he did not hurt anyone. We need to recognize that he is not a bad person, and this is the first offense he's had. And because he is very involved in his community and is very beneficial to his community, I ask to lower his community service hours to 10 hours and remove the apology letter to his parents, because his parents have already formally punished him, and keep it to 2 jury duties, because he's also very, once again, involved within his community, and this extra jury duty is not required of him because he's already giving back a lot to his community. And with that, I am going to statement.
Members of the jury, the defendant has admitted to the violation of driving without a driver's license. The law provides, based on the evidence presented, it is your duty to propose a fair and reasonable sanctions to be imposed upon the defendant. Keep in mind that you may accept the recommendations of the prosecution or the defense. You may also impose different sanctions so long as they are equivalent and appropriate. However, you may not assign fewer sanctions than those recommended by the defense. The bailiff will escort you into the jury room for deliberations. The first thing you must do is select 1 juror to serve as a foreperson. Next, you should discuss the evidence and complete the jury form. Once you have done so, the bailiff will escort you back into the courtroom. The defendant and/or his parent's guardian shall remain in the courthouse and be present when the decision of the jury is announced. After the decision has been announced, the defendant and/or his or her parents or guardians will meet you with the youth court director to arrange for completion of the sanctions imposed by the jury. All rise. You may be seated. Members of the jury, have you decided sanctions for the defendant?
Yes, Your Honor, we have.
Would the bailiff please bring me the sanction? Will the defendant and the defendant's counsel please stand? Will the foreperson please read the sanctions?
The jury recommends to the court that the following sanctions be imposed in this case. 15 hours of community service, no letter of apology, however, 2 jury duties.
The court hereby adopts and orders the sanctions recommended by the jury. Will the bailiff please escort the defendant and his or her parent guardians to the youth court director to make arrangements for the completion of the sanction imposed by the jury?